Good evening, everybody. We'd like to welcome you to the Thursday, February 2nd, 2017 school board meeting for the Enlarged City School District of Middletown. At this time, if we could please rise for our Pledge of Allegiance, led by Ms. Tobias this evening. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we have any moments, John, or no?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bison. And now for the mission statement for the Enlarged City School District of Middletown, Pastor Williams.
The mission statement of the Enlarged City School District of Middletown: we strive to provide fiscally sound educational opportunities in a safe environment that continuously supports our diverse student population. We will enable all students to graduate, to reach their full potential, to become lifelong learners, and to be competitive, productive members of society.
Thank you, Pastor Williams. First of all, I'd like to apologize to everybody. I'm a little bit under the weather this evening, so bear with me. Roll call. Mrs. Clark. Here.
Here.
Here. Here.
Here.
Thank you. I need an approval for this evening's agenda. I need a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Perino, seconded by Mrs. Knapp. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 8-0. I need an approval for the regular minutes of January 19th, 2017. Moved by Pastor Williams, seconded by Mrs. Knapp. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 8-0. I need approval for special meeting minutes from January 31st, 2017.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Perino.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Knapp. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 8-0. Recognitions, announcements, and community reports. We'll start over with Mrs. Knapp. None this evening. Mr. McElroy.
Nothing very major except that we obviously started Black History Month, and it's a very important month, and I know the schools throughout the district are going to be engaging in a number of important activities, recognizing the achievements of various African Americans, both past and present, like Frederick Douglass and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, former President Obama, and I'm sure others. So that was all for me, I guess.
Thank you, Mr. McElroy. Mr. Bison.
I have nothing, but I love following Daryl because he covers it all. I can just say ditto.
Yeah, you're stuck between Daryl and John. He'll cover everything for us. Thank you, Mr. Bison. Pastor Williams.
Nothing much. Just Mr. McElroy alluded to it. This is February, Black History Month, and he mentioned some wonderful, great names. But there are also many contributions from African Americans throughout the history of the United States and throughout the history of the world that are extremely significant. And sometimes there's some that are somewhat obscure that we don't really know and mention them all. But we're just grateful to be able to have this time to celebrate. And again, like I said, I've always said whenever we come to these times of remembering the different communities and the different communities of people that we have, is that it's our diversity that makes us strong. It's our diversity that makes us unique. It's not that we're all exactly the same, but we all come from different backgrounds with different experiences, and it's that coming together, the good, the bad, and the ugly, coming together to make everything work out for the good. So that's about it. That's about it. Happy African American History Month.
Thank you, Pastor Williams. Mrs. Blumenau.
I get to be the first one to say congratulations to the first graduating class of 2017.
Yes, that's right.
So that was exciting last night to see. We had 15 graduates that graduated early, and 15 that graduated early, and 11 that graduated that took a little extra time. Yes. No, they did it. They were a very rowdy, excited crowd last night. They were. So it was fun.
Thank you, Mrs. Blumenauer. Mr. Crescenzo.
I did the same. It was really exciting, to see them, the excitement that they had, and the addresses were wonderful, and they're off. They're off into a new future and a new frontier, and we all wish them very well. It was very well done. Very well done ceremony.
Thank you, Mr. Crescenzo. Mr. Perino.
Thank you. Well, thank you, President Estrada. This coming Sunday is Super Bowl Sunday, as everyone I'm sure knows, but it's also the Elks Pancake Breakfast, which goes from 7 to 1, and the Elks do so much for the Middletown School District, including the scholarships, supporting baseball and softball teams, bicycle programs. So come on out, enjoy yourself, 7 to 1, have a nice breakfast, then go home and get ready for the Super Bowl. Now, just continuing on with this, a number of our students, our groups, are working the Elks Pancake Breakfast. Without them, it would not be as successful as it always is. Barbara Bedell did an excellent story on the Elks Pancake Breakfast, and she mentioned our organizations who are working the breakfast. I just want to read that for a second. The annual Pancake Breakfast hosted by the Middletown Elks will be from 7 to 1 Sunday at the Lodge on the corner of Highland Avenue and Prospect Street. It's a winner on the chairmanship of John Egan, and it runs smoothly thanks to the Elks volunteers and to the terrific crew that comes from the Middletown School District. Students and their advisors give up their Sunday to help. They'll set up and clean up, and they'll help serve. They'll also pitch in wherever needed, and yes, they do. They are polite and community-oriented. They're also smart. Among the teams are members of the National Honor Societies, including students from Maple Hill and Monhegan. The latter is known as the National Junior Honor Society, and the Middletown High School NJROTC. Tickets at the door, $8 for adults and $6 for children. But I'm glad the students are getting recognition because it's very, very well deserved. They do work hard on that day, and I'll give a report at the next meeting. I know Rose is usually there and Linda Knapp, so if you can, stop up, meet and greet the students, have a nice breakfast. Continuing on for a moment. I want to give a shout out to the Times Herald Record for that nice article on our new football coach, Tim Stremfeld. And, and I also want to compliment Coach Stremfeld on the article, on his tremendous insight. I'm just going to read this, and I don't usually read articles, but I thought it's very important to read a portion. Tim says, "Yes, I want to win football games, but at the end of the day, I want every single kid who comes through to know that when football ends, you need something to bank on. All the kids that played for me in the past know I hound them about, I want you to be a good citizen. You are going to get better at football just through practice. But in school and off the field, I want them to be better people. That's what I'm going to be preaching to these kids." Now, isn't that what we're here for? To make better people of our students and better citizens in the end. No matter what we say, we're getting students ready for college and careers. Yes, we are. But in the end, it all comes down to that. So, Tim follows some great coaches. Sammy Barone, Dick Wolfslayer, John Brunner, goes on and on, Nick Scally, and so on, Bill Donahue. So we all wish him luck as we did in the last meeting. Finally, or next to finally, the keys to a good education. I've said this since I've been on the board, and other members have said it. Naturally, have to have good programs. I mean, that's a given, and we do have excellent programs here. And by the way, I think the next frontier is going to be virtual reality. So get ready for that, Mr. Tuttle. But continuing on for a moment, I happened to be at a concert at the high school, which was a Manhattan, the Maple Hill concert. And there I came in contact with a person, Joanne Federico, and she started talking about education in Middletown. I was very pleased. And here's a letter that she wrote. So this is an involved parent. Please see the attached file for the copy of the appreciation note given to my son's mastery math teacher at Presidential Park. I commend Mrs. Gordon for doing the extra mile and motivating her students. I truly appreciate all the support and hard work our board has been providing to the district. My son and daughter benefited from all programs, including the mastery classes, music education, and other extracurricular activities that I believe are quite a factor of their good performance and discipline, both in school and at home. And she goes on to thank the board for providing programs. And I want to say that Mrs. Gordon, I was very impressed. She took time out to write a personal note to John, who, again, a student taking charge of his education. Here's a note she wrote. It is my absolute pleasure to check your work every day. The pride you take in your work shows how much respect you have for yourself and your teacher. Great job. So here you have it, a great teacher, a student taking charge of his education, good programs, involved parents. It's all here. Good education is not, it never has been a mystery to you, not a mystery to me, and I've been in for many, many decades. So that's it. I just want to commend, and we talked about the graduation last evening. I just want to commend the Parents Club of the high school because they did set up a table to recruit membership, and they took their time to do that. So I was brief tonight, and that's all I have right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perino. I do want to thank all the parents who showed up and guardians and friends who showed up in support of the graduates from last evening. We had a total of 27, I believe. It was a really nice evening, as our graduation ceremonies typically are. So I want to thank everybody involved. I know Mr. Brownstone was over there with the camera, so it'll probably be on Midi TV sometime in the future. And it's on already, he tells me, so he's quick. So, and the rest of the GERTEC crew over at the high school. And as John mentioned, the Parents Club out there at the high school as well. So great job by all. Do also want to remind folks that you are now able to pick up Board of Education member petitions if you'd like to run for the school board this year. There are 3 positions available. My position, I believe Mr. McElroy's position, and Mr. Pierre's position as well. I know that at least one of us 3 will not be running this year, so there'll definitely be at least one new spot. So head on over to our district clerk's office at the Board of Education office over on Wisner Avenue. You can also contact the district clerk at 845-326-1196 if you're interested in running. I believe you need to collect 100 signatures within the city of Middletown for residents who are 18 and over and eligible to vote. You do need to be a resident of our school district. That would include the town of Walk Hill, portions of the town of Walk Hill, and the city of Middletown. And I think the only thing is that you need to be literate, correct? Be able to read and write. So good luck to those. In addition to that, the Orange County School Boards Association last evening announced that they're going to be holding their session for what's called the prospective school board members seminar. That's on April 1st, April Fool's Day, 2017, from 9 a.m. to noon. It'll be held at the Orange Ulster BOCES Administrative Building over on Gibson Road in Goshen. Reservations are needed by March 24th. It is a great session. If you are anticipating running for the school board, I would recommend that you attend. You'll know all of the facets about a school board, and what's good about that is you're going to hear it from folks who aren't from Middletown. You're hearing it from folks who have either current experience or past experience as school board members, and they come from other areas, Pine Bush, Port Jervis, things of that nature. So you'll get a good input from a variety of different sources about what this job entails day in and day out. I'm going to give this over to Mrs. Clark, if we could put that on the website at some point in time as we approach those days as well. And also a reminder to school board members that on Tuesday, February 7th at the high school, it'll be the NJROTC Pass and Review.
When is it again? I'm sorry.
It's Tuesday, February 7th, the next Tuesday. It's a wonderful ceremony to attend if you have not been able to attend one of those. I have it down as 11:30.
11:30.
Does that sound right? So 11:30 over at the high school. I would recommend that if you are going to attend, to RSVP to Commander Wall via the email, the school district email system. And that's all I have for recognitions, announcements, or any community reports. Do you have any? Okay. Moving on for our first opportunity to address the school board. This is an opportunity for members of the community to address the school board. We do not engage in conversation with community members at this stage. It's our opportunity to sit back and listen to what our community members have to say. If they have questions that administration can answer on point, then administration will go ahead and do that. Otherwise, we'll answer your questions at the following school board meeting if your question needs some sort of research to be done. You'll have 4 minutes. Mr. McElroy over here on my right will keep the timer. When there's a minute left, he'll put up a placard. When 30 seconds, he'll put up a placard, and time's up. At that point, we just ask that you wind down. We're just not going to shut off the mic or anything. So if anybody's interested, come on up. And there is a signing sheet at the podium for you to put down your personal information. Any takers? Yep. How are you?
I'm a member of the Middletown community. My daughters attend the Middletown School District. They're happy. There's been an issue at the Maple Hill with the biology teacher. One of my daughters, she's in 8th grade, and they haven't had a biology teacher for the month, or a little bit over a month, and it's concerning because she's going to be taking Regents this year, and we don't know what's the story. I talked to Mr. O'Donnell this afternoon, and he said that we're looking for somebody, but we're just concerned about the region for the month they haven't.
It's Monhagen?
Yes.
Okay, because you mentioned Maple Hill earlier.
I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
Because one of them goes to, the youngest one goes to Maple Hill, the oldest goes to.
Not a problem. So, did you guys want to address that now?
Yes, I would like to.
Okay, they'll address it to you.
Thank you very much.
We were in conversation with Mr. Donia this afternoon about this. We're aware of the need to provide that instruction for the students, and there are 2 candidates who will be interviewed Monday of next week, and we should have someone in there in a relatively short period of time. In the event that we need to provide extra assistance for the kids to prepare, I can assure you we will get those children prepared. We understand the gravity of the situation, the seriousness, and we're working as fast as we can because of the classroom's teacher who's absent has been notifying the school week by week that they're returning, and then at the end of the week saying, I'm not coming back next week. So it's been a little unusual situation, but we've made a decision to go ahead moving someone in there as soon as we can get the certified person to do that. But rest assured that we will provide any extra assistance to the children. Since the test is in June, the children will be prepared, I can assure you of that, because we too find it to be a very serious situation, and we're on top of this, I can assure you, sir.
Thank you very much. We
You're welcome.
appreciate it.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to address the school board at this time? No, any letters, Mrs. Clark? No letters? We'll move on to personnel action items. Just a notice to the board, there was one late entry, personnel memorandum number 16C for a school psychologist funded by our community school set-aside, right? The part of the budget for the set-aside?
Yes.
And I believe that's for Truman Moon? Yes. And that's for Truman Moon. Does anybody have any issue with doing all three personnel memorandums at the same time? Seeing none, I need a motion for the approval of personnel memorandum 16A instructional, 16B non-instructional, and 16C instructional.
So moved.
Moved by by Mr. Perino, seconded by Mrs. Blumenau. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 8-0. Any introduction of personnel? Okay. I need approval for financial memorandum number 17.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Perino, seconded by Mrs. Knapp. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 8-0. I need approval of special services memorandum number 15. Moved by Pastor Williams, seconded by Mrs. Knapp. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 8-0. I need approval for the acceptance of resignation of employee number 3135.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Tobiasen, seconded by Mrs. Knapp. Any discussion? This has been discussed previously in executive session over the last several board meetings. And I believe the resignation letter was included in our transmittals online. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 8-0. I need approval for acceptance of settlement agreement with employee number 3488. Moved by Pastor Williams, seconded by Mrs. Knapp. This was also discussed in executive session about a couple months ago, I want to think. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 8-0. And now we move on to the superintendent's report, our budget presentation, second one of the year. This one encompassing the instructional component. And it's off to Dr. Eastwood and Mr. Tuttle.
Mike, you want to give an intro to it before you start? Well, you're going to go to the podium, right? Okay. As everybody knows, we have 4 sections of the budget that we do separately. This is our second presentation, which deals with instruction, that instructional portion, which is actually the largest percentage of our budget.
Thank you, Dr. Eastwood. President Estrada, members of the board, thank you. As Dr. Eastwood mentioned, this is the second component of our budget. It's the pretty substantial one for us. This is February 2nd, it's the instructional, and then the next one will be capital benefits, and then we have one for revenue and discussion, and then March 16th is our public input. So just as a percentage of the total budget, this instructional one is 57% of the actual budget. So it's a pretty substantial component. There's a lot of things inside of here, teachers, programs, things like that. So that's why the numbers, that's why it's a big percentage. Some of our long-range assumptions, we review these at every meeting. Sometimes they change. We get new information between each meeting, so we try to update this as we go. We anticipate a 3% annual inflation rate for most items. The teachers' retirement system, that's a 10% increase this year. That just came out this week. The employees' retirement system is 16.5. And the one that's really alarming to us now is the health insurance premiums are looking at a 20% increase for us this year. So we're really investigating that at this point. State aid increase and our foundation aid is right around 3% right now. And then with the community schools set-aside funds, that's up about 66%. And those are the funds that we need to set aside where we cannot supplant programs. We need to have new innovative programs with those funds, so we have to earmark them specifically for that. Here's a little 8-year history of the percentage of change. This year, we're down roughly almost a percentage, down to about 7.36% increase over last year's budget. So this is just a historical graph of how it went up and down based on the economy as well as program needs inside the district. Some of our pressures that we always are dealing with, and I'm going to be talking about healthcare quite extensively over the next couple months, ad nauseum probably. We have the healthcare premiums that are going to drive our pressure. Our unfunded mandates are always there. The Part 154 with English E&L department, APPR, our special education costs are going to be going up a little bit. Some of that's related to the healthcare costs, and then also our enrollment in the special education department is growing as well. Some of our testing requirements keep creeping up on us. And then we had the elimination last year of our funding for the after-school and summer programs. So we're still trying to continue those. And since 2007 and 2008, we've had 604 new students enter the district. So our enrollment is up substantially, with a little increase in aid. And our growing homeless population continues to rise. So those are some of our pressures that we're dealing with as far as funding our priorities. So here's our program overview. What we do, so everyone's aware, we usually hand out the actual line-by-line items to the board members in advance, so when they come in, they have all the understanding of what lies underneath every component under here. These are just the overall budget categories, and then with everything included, it's at 7.36% increase, and this is program total without benefits. Some of the things that you see on here is our salaries. Those are contractual. Our handicapping service, students with handicapping, those are salaries, and program as well. That's a lot of transportation, a lot of services there. We also have our special schools. That is with our community schools, and then our summer schools is included in there. Some of the bigger drivers is our contract transportation. That's based on the CPI in May. So these are some of our anticipated, and as we get closer and have more discussion about the capital and benefits, which will be in 2 weeks, then we'll have a revenue discussion in 4 weeks, and that will really determine what we need to look at program-wise and where we start looking at what we need and where we need to start cutting. So that's essentially our program component. What makes up our program increases, these are our major ones. The ESL Part 154, we need to maintain that. Our salaries, the equipment, supplies, software digital resources, using textbook funds to help us support some of our digital resources. Our purchase services, special education with tuition, and our contract and BOCES, those prices keep increasing as well. Our transportation and our other BOCES programs that we have, and not related to special ed. So that's just a summary, a little bit better snapshot of the bigger grid that we had. So that's really it for the instructional component. There's a lot in there to digest, and then we can open it up for questions. One thing I want to bring everyone's attention to is the budget calendar. Most importantly, the budget vote is on May 16th. Okay, so we'll be reiterating that as well. And then make sure everyone gets in there and register to vote. Okay, open it up for questions.
So I just wanted to cover one of the, as they say, the elephant in the room. You saw a 20% increase in health insurance costs. That is with our consortium. And just so the public and the board, we've had a lot of conversations about this, to be aware that we are analyzing those costs and looking for alternatives in a very aggressive way, because we find that increase to be, for a better term, unacceptable.
It's probably not sustainable.
And it's not sustainable, is absolutely correct. So although we have to put that in because that's the number that we're looking at right now, we're hoping to mitigate that substantially in the next 2 to 3 months. Yes, sir.
just
John.
looking. Let's see.
It's on.
That's on, okay. Just looking at that, if that health insurance were to stand at 20%, it just appears to me, a cursory view here, that we have to make tremendous cuts to make up for that. With almost $4 million, am I correct on that?
3.6 right now.
3.6.
3.6 million. Not good. As Ed said, it can't, something has to be done with that, and it can't stand.
And the early indications, from what I understand, is that that's just this year's, right? That there's a,
We would anticipate that that is an initial infusion and that next year you would see another increase. To predict what that increase would be based on this year and conversation, it would be still substantial. Most of the increases, I believe, that are across the state are in the 10 to 15 range. So it's significantly more than what other healthcare costs are going up. Understanding that, we still believe that based on the age of our workforce, that being young, believe it or not, we have one of the youngest workforces in the Hudson Valley region right now, that our experiences should theoretically be lower than most of the averages. So understanding all of those things, we're in the process of taking a very serious look at where we are now and what the options are that sit in front of us with the hope that eventually, as I said, in another month, 2 or 3 at the most before we put this out to the voters, that we'll have some relief and mitigation through analysis and decision-making on alternatives.
To that, the real actual percentage is like 26%, but they are making some adjustments, and that's why we're down to 20. Otherwise, we'd be.
you would think they'd come to us with a solidified number, not an adjustment.
So that's why
We'll start off with Mrs. Knapp for questions, including the health care and the rest of the budget.
Well, I think one of the major issues with health care is that we really have no idea where that's going this year. So even if we find a new provider, or we can maybe lower the cost, that could change so drastically this year. I mean, that's even with us in healthcare. So it's like a free fall right now. We have no idea what's going and where.
It is, but I think that these costs are exorbitant, and that looking at where others are at, which are, I would use the word significantly lower, even understanding general increases, that there should be other options for us.
Do you think that our provider has tried to increase the cost because of the unstable government, or what we're not sure where healthcare is going to go this year?
I don't believe that is the reason for the increase
It was
this
just
year.
an increase due?
It's an increase based on management.
Claims.
And
The claims are up.
I will
Healthcare
say
claims.
that I spoke with a couple of individuals at the county school board meeting last evening. Middletown Valley's already left the consortium. They did last year. There's other schools that are contemplating doing it as well. So this is not us. We're not going out on a limb as one of those who are looking to possibly switch. So I think most people are unhappy with it. And most of the responses that I got was that it's a management issue. It's not necessarily driven by what's going on right now in the general health care.
Okay, good. Hopefully we can find a better provider or a more cost efficient.
And knowing that that's out there, can you explain a little bit that if we ever decided, not saying that we're going down that road, but if we ever decided to go with a different provider, that our impacts with our employees is that we have to have something that's at the very least the same.
We have some language that's in the contracts to make sure that whatever we do is equivalent to the New York State plan. So we understand that. Additionally, representatives from NYSET, CSEA, the administrators, and are going to be present during all of the conversations. So this is nothing that we're doing on our own. We will be creating a committee of which we have representation of those major groups and the Board of Education as we go through this process. But we are locked into assuring that the benefits are not reduced past the New York State plan, which is equivalent to pretty much equivalent to what we have now.
Any other questions, Mrs. Knapp?
There was one that I was wondering about with the changes to, hold on, I'm sorry.
That's okay, take your time.
The transportation. I know there was a time that our local bus company was having a conversation on increasing their salaries. Whatever happened with that?
Expand on that, but we have a multi-year contract with them.
How many years? Please.
Close to 2020, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. And they're inside there, it can only increase no more than 2% of the CPI every year. So
the increase that we're seeing here under the
Yeah.
regular ed is just part of that contract?
Yeah, so
That's the 2%?
Yeah.
Okay.
that's what we're looking at.
All right, I'm all set. Thank you.
Mr. McElroy?
Mr. Tuttle, in the budget, the items that you presented, that's just a rolling over from one year to the next, like to continue doing exactly what we're doing this year?
Yeah, there's nothing really exceptionally new in there. We're just taking what the contractual obligations are and rolling them forward.
Okay.
Right? So we look at every contract and every employee's salary and roll it up.
All right. That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure also for the public, like, there's not 20 extra teachers that we snuck in there.
As you see, there was no slides about adding, there's no staff, there's nothing in.
Okay.
There may be some increases in some purchase services because we need some new equipment or something in there, but there's no staff in this one.
And then relative to the healthcare conversation, I think it's important to reemphasize that a lot of the issue with the premium increase has nothing really to do with the existing federal law, because the plan that we're in is not a plan that's on the exchange. It's not, it is in some ways affected, but it's a pretty minor, impact in terms of benefit enhancements, really more than anything else. So you mentioned, Mr. Tuttle, that the claims were up, I guess, in the plan.
Yep.
And would some of the increase in the premium also be due to what Mr. Estrada had referenced? If you have more claims and fewer customers, because if one district in the county pulls out in anticipation of whatever, then that obviously makes it difficult on the other districts that remain.
Yeah, if the claims are up, you still need revenues to pay for the claims. So that's what the offset is right now, and that's why the healthcare system, the health plan, is in a real big deficit because of the claims. They didn't anticipate it,
right?
So that's what's driving.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that they didn't anticipate claims being up. They probably didn't anticipate a district coming out.
Correct.
Those kinds of things unfortunately happen, and it puts us in a pretty tight spot as a board. And I want to echo what Mr. Estrada said, because I feel very strongly, obviously, that we need to make sure that our employees who have this health insurance are not, harmed to the extent that we can prevent that from happening. I mean, whatever we change to, it'll probably be, close enough, but my personal preference would be, the same or better. And obviously, that isn't always easy to accomplish. But I remember even within this plan when there was a change to another network of doctors, because currently it's the Blue Cross Blue Shield PPO, but prior to that We had been in the GHI network briefly, and that was horrendous. And so even changes internally in the plan can cause a lot of turmoil and strife. And so I think, at least for me, I agree with Mr. Estrada that we need to try to make this, and Dr. Eastwood, try to make this as seamless as possible, whatever we decide to do. And I don't know what the time frame ultimately is going to be in terms of, we'll see, I guess, what the information we get back and make decisions.
McElroy, I do want to emphasize a couple things that you mentioned, and why it's a big decision for Middletown if we were to decide to pull out of the existing consortium. We are the largest, second largest, or just about even with Monroe Woodbury, as part of that program. So them losing one of the two largest school districts in that program will have a significant impact on their program. The other thing, just to be transparent with the public, Tuesday at a special meeting, the board did approve the hiring of a consultant to take a look at the program that we're currently in and to take a look at any possible alternatives thereon. So we've taken a proactive approach to try to find out where our district fits. In addition to that, part of the whole thing is, if we all remember at this table, our last contract with the teachers union included no increase on the side of the teachers for health care. We made them up in other areas for that. And so we've always had a really nice relationship with our teachers union in regards to stuff like that. But if we were to stay in this program with 20% increase this year, and God knows what it would be in the future, that puts that ability to do that at risk. Sooner or later, it has to come from somewhere other than just the school district. So doing this is also a protection for our unions and our employees in trying to keep their costs down on their contributions to the program. So I do want to emphasize that. Mr. Bison.
Michael, Code 2610 shows that there's a decrease, but I couldn't find that.
That's the library?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
As you know, we switched from Dynex to Opals, so there's a substantial savings with the service for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I saw when I added the figures, so then that came out of some other place.
Right,
but
and plus last year we had the conversion cost in there, so we removed that this year as well.
Just see,
Right. So the Dynex, Dynex was our library cataloging system, and then that became very antiquated, and then so we switched to Opals, which is an open source library system, and so we're seeing some better use from the librarians. They like the system much better, managing the books and the collections, and then the interface and everything for the students is easier for them to navigate. So.
That's being run through Sullivan BOCES?
No, Orange Ulster.
Oh, Orange Ulster is right. So it is aidable.
Yes.
Okay.
I also want to, while you're on that topic, this is every year we're looking to become more cost effective. I think we're probably the only school district that's RFID chipping kindergarten through 12th grade, meaning for those in the public that we have RFID chips inside the books. So we could eliminate certain personnel positions that check books in and out because now the kids do it themselves, and it's done electronically. So people may say, well, what does that mean in savings? The first year, if I remember correctly, it was about $275,000 in savings just in moving to RFID chipping alone. And because of that, what used to take maybe 2 weeks or more to do an inventory in a typical library takes about 20 minutes now, because all they do is move up and down the aisles with the scanner, and what that software in the scanner does is read virtually every book. It tells us which books are out, which are in. It'll even tell us which books are misshelved. So, I mean, it's a very sophisticated, but it's a very significant cost savings event. The other interesting thing about that, which is, I think, important to say, that once we went to RFID chipping and the kids were checking their books in and out, especially at the elementary levels, we had a significant increase in circulation, meaning that more books were taken out by the kids. And I thought that that was intriguing and said a lot simply because kids are now in control of checking their own books in and out and taking care of them. So it was a cost savings move. We've been doing these kinds of things for a number of years now in the libraries and other places, but that's one good example.
I think a commentary on the, this district is one of the ones on the cutting edge. When we moved to Dynex, the public library system, and there were 3 schools initially in the coaster at BOCES. And Michael is absolutely right. When it started, it was Dynex Scholar. It moved to different platforms, and certainly moving to the Opal now is very, very smart on the school district's part. And I think the other thing in looking back, and as we're talking about the health insurance, and those of us that have been around for a while, that was Manny Axelrod, who was superintendent of BOCES. That was his baby, where we were all self-insured. And now, as time has moved on, and the situation has changed in the world and cost, it's time for us now to look at another alternative. I have a book that was written by a professor at SUNY New Paltz at the time who was commending this district in this area for being on the cutting edge, for being self-employed, self-insured for the area. But certainly, this district cannot substantiate a 20% increase. It's just the loss of jobs or the tax increase, and you're trying to balance the scales, and it's just not going to work. Right. We're going to have to do something. I did want to ask, though, now, say that we pull out, because Newburgh is not a part of that consortium. They weren't a part of BOCES. But say that we pull out, is it more beneficial, or is it too soon to tell for a couple of districts to get together and have a health insurance? Or are we better off just going on our own?
Yeah, so that's not my space. And which is exactly why we hired this gentleman to come in who is an expert at looking at these types of situations, knows the healthcare industry nationwide, and also is very much aware of what's going on in New York State and what's available in New York State. He also knows both consortiums, large programs, and self-insured. So our responsibility, we have a significant fiduciary responsibility to our community. Mm-hmm. We've demonstrated that over and over again because our cost per pupil, even though the governor keeps saying that we have the highest cost per pupil in the country, our cost
per Middletown, the state.
The state has it. Yeah. Let me back up now. So our cost per pupil is less than the state average, and it's $1,000 less per pupil than similar districts. So because we've taken our fiduciary responsibility very seriously, we've been able to make improvements programmatically and in our infrastructure, such as these types of buildings, at either zero increase in tax levy at the same time, keeping our cost per pupil below the state average. So the interesting part about all of this is that now that we see that we're in a consortium and we're sitting on a 20% increase, the impact to us is very substantial. The fiduciary impact is very substantial, and we have that responsibility to take care of our students and our district, regardless of the consortium. That's our responsibility. So where some people say you're in the consortium, therefore you have to stick with them, I professionally disagree with that because of what our mission is for our community.
I just didn't know if, since other districts might be talking, if it would be more beneficial if more than one belonged. And I guess my other concern is that consortium is part of BOCES, correct? Is the administrative...
No.
It's a separate consortium?
No, it's an individual consortium.
Okay.
And the only relationship it has with BOCES is that it subcontracts with BOCES to manage the claims and those types of things,
Okay.
correct, Mike?
So there's not BOCES administrative cost or anything involved in that?
No, but remember, BOCES belongs to the same consortium.
Right?
So when you see the BOCES budget come through, you're going to see a substantial increase unless they make changes as well in their costs, because they're going to pass those costs
20%.
on to us.
Yeah.
So we're paying.
And that's basically the only thing that a school district votes on is the administrative
budget.
And even if we leave the consortium, that part of the increase will still be part of the school district's budget because BOCES will still be part of the consortium.
BOCES charges for the accounting of the health plan, so they're the ones that bill us, and they manage the accounting for the OU health plan. So that's on our service requests.
Thank you, Mike.
We have already zeroed that out.
Yes, we zero that out today.
So we are anticipating making changes.
Thank you, Mr. Tobias. Pastor Williams, you good? Mrs. Blumenau. Sorry.
I just wanted to comment on the increase, the tuition increase, BOCES tuition
That's what
increase
was going to be my
at $1.5
question.
million.
That's, we're seeing a greater enrollment, and we're also anticipating the healthcare costs are going to drive those costs up for us. So we're reviewing all of our BOCES and our day and residential tuitions now, and we're seeing a significant increase in costs there. So,
And that's after we brought students already back.
yeah.
And that's exactly why I'm commenting on it, because I know we've been working really hard to bring those kids back, and we're providing great services now, but I know that there are certain circumstances which we are not
Right. So the
able to handle.
The problem for us in budgeting is we do not get the actual BOCES dollar amounts until, a month or so from now. Right. So this is a best guess where we think it's going to land.
Okay.
It could be less, it could be more.
Okay.
So that's what we're.
All of these numbers are fluid.
Yeah.
For the next 3 months, or 2 months.
Yeah.
Sure.
Until we get a handle on it. Actually, we had a meeting today to talk about other possibilities of trying to get at and reduce some costs for us. So, I mean, those conversations are constantly going on, and until we have the full budget put together, and then we see what the true revenue side is, because we don't have those numbers yet. We have the governors, we don't have the final on that, and then the tax levy and what that will produce for us as well. When we have all those pieces together, we'll have a better handle on it. The concerning part is, that sticks out like a sore thumb, is that health insurance cost.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Blumenau. Mr. Crescenzo.
Organizations such as ours and others in the county, we seem to be downstream on anything that happens with virtually anything, but especially with this health insurance. Has anyone, I realize that increased claims will raise the premiums, but has anybody looked into why the claims themselves are so expensive? That, the product that we're buying just seems to go up and up and up and up all the time. Is there anyone anywhere, government, whatever, that is trying to address that they can stabilize those costs or bring them down?
Yeah, I think what they've analyzed is there's some different trending going on and how healthcare is administered, and people are seeing multiple doctors per visit. So, they'll go to one office and then they say go to the next office to get blood work and then et cetera. So they could see 3 different doctors and have 3 different claims in an hour. So that's what they're saying. As
the consumer, I probably would see that as a reduction in my benefits if I couldn't do that, that would be. It sounds to me like by May, or June at the latest, maybe at the end of the fiscal year, that this entire health insurance consortium could collapse. Do you think that's a possibility, that if we pull out and
I can't speculate, and I don't know. Dr. Eastwood probably knows who's thinking about pulling out as well. It could be a pattern, it could be an issue. It all bases on the claims and who has the high expense
Right.
claims. That's what it comes down to.
And I've got full confidence in the administration that they will always do their due diligence and with the consultant look for the best plan for us. But is this just something that we have to expect over the years, that some years we might not have these unbelievable increases, but someday it's going to catch up to us?
Well, the problem for us is if you put 20% on it now, and even if you put 5% next year, it just keeps compounding.
Right.
So it's not going to slow down. So that's what, if another 20% came up in a year, then we're really doing, 20% on 20%
Yeah,
is
it's devastating.
substantial. And then they could do mid-year hikes, so
Okay.
we're not sure.
Long and short of it is the healthcare industry is very volatile right now. I'll use that term. And nobody knows where it's
I like
going.
Linda's term better. She said messed up.
Okay. And she's the nurse.
She's the nurse.
No, I mean, it is a very serious problem. For instance, the pharmaceuticals, the drugs itself was a very substantial reason for the increase as well. So those costs are not, there's no real regulation on those costs. And so there's also a variety of ways to deal with some of that, and which will be discussed with us as we go through this process. So the long and short of it is that this simple cost, and I call it a simple cost because we all need that type of care and protection, could have a serious impact programmatically on virtually every school district in the state, not just ours. So where we've worked very hard to assure good services and good programs and facilities, a lot of that could be in jeopardy if somebody very much not in our positions, but legislatively start to take a serious look at what's happening and find some solid solutions to this whole problem that seems to be out of control.
I don't have any confidence in that because, there's not a lot of courage right now in that upper legislative branch to take something like this head on. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Crescenzo.
Thank you.
Mr. Perino.
Thank you very much, Mr. Estrada. Mike, I want to compliment you for the very comprehensible budget packet you prepared tonight. Just looking, I've asked about health insurance, and, we sit here year after year, and we always have to sort of talk about cuts. If this happens, we're going to cut this much, and if that happens, we're going to cut that much. And that's too bad, because in the last few years, we've cut about, 150 positions?
Yes, the last 6 years, I believe it is, that we've cut about 150 positions from the district.
Eventually, and it's amazing what we've done, because even with these cuts, our graduation rates have increased. Now, you can just cut so much. It's just like anything else, any other business or the military and so on. It's going to affect the basic core of your, quote, your business. And unfortunately, if this 20% were to stand, I just fear the impact on our staff and our students. But going on for a minute, very interesting on the governor's proposed budget aid. I see a large increase for textbooks. Is that
Yeah, it's up
130 textbook aid, 130.3? Is that because we're now allowed to buy software with that? Right.
That's what we're doing on the textbook line, is we're using it for digital resources.
I know it used to be eliminated to just textbooks.
The law changed about 3 to 5 years ago.
Mhm.
And I think the idea of the bond coming into the state, and you may be seeing this increase simply because given the technological upgrades that are taking place across the state, there then is this also need to make sure that digital resources, I'll use that in general, are available for the schools. Because you could have a nice infrastructure, but if you don't have anything to deliver, it's no good. So.
Now, another problem not indicated in this budget, but down the line, you always have to think of a couple years ahead here. If this new foundation aid formula, or whatever it is, we don't know yet,
Would be good.
if that goes through, this is going to completely negate this full phase, a possible foundation aid full phase in.
Yeah. So I'll tell you ahead of the game because I have an editorial that I'm writing about that. First of all, I find the fact that it was hidden inside the executive budget problematic. Two, one of the things that it clearly takes away is there was always a goal. In other words, the legislature said that this is how much in order per pupil, the amount per pupil that was necessary for each school district in order to educate, or what they refer to as provide a sound, basic and sound education to students. So the legislature, they understood that coming from the lawsuit. They determined what the targets were based on the needs of schools. And that's how foundation aid was created. You now eliminate foundation aid, which means eliminating those targets. And we also know that this state is one of the most their distribution of state aid is the most discriminatory or one of the most discriminatory in the country, and we'll be showing that fact to be true, especially when you compare it. It's discriminatory based on poverty, but it's even more discriminatory based on race. Which is why when you look at what foundation aid we're supposed to be getting, it is so significantly more based on our student population than most. Every study, regardless of who does that study, every one of those studies over the last 4 or 5 years has identified the Middletown City School District as one of the 10 most underfunded school districts in New York State. So the concern that we as a school district and community should have for the removal of that target is very concerning to me and should be to everybody in this district. That means what they're basically doing is getting rid of a legitimate target of aid for high needs districts. And it'll go back to the way it was before foundation aid, which is basically 3 men in a room making a decision about how that distribution of state aid should go.
I will tell you that Orange County School Board's meeting last evening, this was a major topic of discussion. The representative from the New York State School Boards Association, who is the liaison to the legislature and the state government, did a presentation to all the representatives of each of the districts. And one of the questions that came out that's part of the governor's proposal, as these guys have mentioned, is the elimination of the existing language for the foundation aid. And that became a hot topic of discussion last evening. As a matter of fact, I handed out to each of the board members a printout that was handed out last night, and every school district got their own respective about what the shortfall is for each of the districts based on the fact that the state has not funded foundation aid to what they were supposed to by legal statute. And we are, on that sheet you will see that we're $47 million in the hole. And you've heard Dr. Eastwood every budget season make this argument that the state is $47 million at least behind in foundation aid to our community. And what does that mean? You know, think of $47 million. And I don't even think we could spend $47 million. A lot of it would probably go right back to the taxpayers.
That is exactly the point that we've made every year, too. You're absolutely right. Although we're $47 million short in what we're supposed to be getting in aid, if we had that aid, the pressure and the tax levy to our community would be less.
By a lot.
So in essence, the community is paying more than it should by law that was passed a couple of years ago. I must say 7, 8, or 9 now, relative to what the needs of our district is. So we're fortunate that we've had a community that supported us, but the concern here is that if the state pulls away from that target and gives up on what we're supposed to be getting, then the relief to our taxpayers is not what it should be based on the law that was passed and the targets that were established at that point in time.
And the points that were made last night were that there's no reason for them to do this but one reason. They're sick and tired of school districts like ours yelling out at the top of their lungs that they're owed $47 million or $50 million. So by getting rid of this language, they're saying, we don't owe you that money anymore. It's gone, just like the gap elimination adjustment. So you can't come to Albany and lobby and say, we owe you $47 million. That statute doesn't exist anymore, so that money's gone. And one of the reasons that they're saying is we're never, ever going to be able to fund that gap. You can imagine that if it's $47 million for us, what it is for Buffalo and Syracuse and New York City and Yonkers and things of that nature. So that's a lot of money that they've had to make up for the last 10 years of underfunding. So the one way to get rid of it is just get rid of the law that they passed. Right. And so why would you, and what they're going to say, according to this gentleman from last night, was that you can't go around saying that we're getting rid of foundation aid, because we're not. We're just going to use a different formula. And that formula will change every year depending on the winds of Albany, how the winds are flying over in Albany. So one year it might be this formula, next year it'll be something else, the next year after that it'll be something different, based on whatever they think is right. So when we go up in about another week and a half to lobby our representatives, which are Senator Bonisic and Assemblywoman Gunther, that will be a point of contention in making sure that something like that is not included. Now, I will tell you that it's probably, the Assembly is probably going to be more opposed to changing that language because they're controlled a lot by New York City. And obviously a change like that affects their constituencies a lot. The area where you might lose is in the Senate. That's the one in the state Senate where they're more, in line with trying to get rid of that language. So we definitely have to do a lot of work.
Just take this into consideration. They don't have the money to take care of kids in kindergarten through 12th grade, but they found significant money, close to $1 billion to $3.6 billion, depending on which study you believe, but it's a lot of money to implement a brand new program of free college tuition. So doesn't it make sense to take care of the K-12 group first that are going to go into college, to make sure that we're all getting into college, those that want to go there? But what they're doing now is creating a recession of support, from my perspective, because there's not that target anymore. But they found the money over here to take care of this other big, expensive program.
I think Dr. Eastwood made the point that I was going to make. It seems we're putting the proverbial cart before the horse here, and it's a very worthy goal, and to have free college for students, that's undoubtedly. But what about our students? What about the students in pre-K and the public school system? I mean, we have a high poverty district here. The last figure I read, almost 200 students are homeless in this district, and that's a large number for a district this size.
In some places, that's the size of an elementary school.
Sure, sure. How are these people going to be taking care of these students? And it just makes it more difficult when a student comes to school not having enough to eat, not having something that's decent to wear. It just makes it harder for the staff to properly educate that student. You can't blame the kids here. They're blameless in this. They're put into this situation which they have no control. I mean, organizations such as the Kiwanis Club, the Lions Club, and the other service clubs, they help out the best they can. But it's just sort of a drop in the bucket. What's really needed here. So that's about all I have to say on this. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Perino. A couple of the items that I had question marked on have already been answered by Mrs. Blumenau and Mr. Perino just now with the textbooks. Just things of note, a couple of more of a note. The BOCE services went up $185,000. And then software, which I'm assuming, is there something specific in the software line?
Which one are you under?
Increased by $142,000.
26. Just anticipating some of our Race to the Top programming coming off.
Back to
Right, so
becoming
we'll be funding some of this digital
expenditure.
content. Yep.
That's another thing we have to remember as that grant winds down, we're going to incorporate the costs into our district.
So we're trying to ease into that.
I just want to be careful about how we talk about that, because we've already brought back most, if not, I'd say 90% of the Race to the Top programming is already embedded into the district.
That's really good.
And general fund in anticipation of this happening. So I don't want folks to think that when the grant goes away, a lot of these programs are going away. They're still inside the system now permanently. They'll be sustained.
Thank you. Is that it?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tuttle, very much for our budget presentation for this evening. We're going to move along now to our second opportunity to address the board. Same rules apply as before. You have 4 minutes. Mr. McElroy will keep tabs on you. Mr. Warren, how are you?
Good.
Haven't seen you in a while.
Couple weeks. Good evening, Dr. Eastwood, Mr. Del Moro, Mr. Tuttle, Mrs. Clark, President Estrada, Vice President Perino, and board members. I just wanted to express my appreciation this evening for a couple of things. First of all, thanks for your service as board members. And I want to commend you for a few meetings back, passing the resolution against or not supporting the president's nominee for Secretary of Education. One of the other local districts made some headlines for not doing that. For the life of me, I can't figure out how public school board members serving in the best interests of the students of their districts and their communities would not support such a resolution. So I thank you for doing that, because she is someone who I see as uniquely unqualified to sit in that position. So thanks. Thank you, Mr. Tuttle, for the budget presentation. And thank you for approving the resolution for the architect's professional services that I saw in the financial memorandum. I've always thought that the lobby of the high school lacked
pizzazz. Or so I'm happy to see that you're going to be doing something with that. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Would anyone else like to address the board at this time?
Good evening, board members. I also join Mr. Warren in thanking the board for keeping the parents of our school district enlightened and informed with respect to the budget challenges we're facing in our district and the state of New York. I recently came across a press release or Facebook from Senator Bonasek announcing that he's going to be having a new position, I believe, in the Budget or Finance Committee. And I urge the board members, when they go up on lobby day, to emphasize to our state senator to seize that opportunity to make it first and foremost priority to ensure that our school children, our district, gets the priority it deserves. Given those $47 million we are owed, I would like to see an effort by our legislature, by our state senator, in conjunction with our 4 other assembly members from Orange County, to see that we get some of those funds retroactively. As unrealistic politically that may be sound, our children are no less than the children of any other school district. They breathe, they aspire, and they deserve the best. And they should not be discriminated against. If you think of our children now, they're at the same spot of the children that were born 100 years ago and became that greatest generation that shaped the course for the later half of the 20th century. Today we're raising the children that are going to school today that will be the leaders for our country, who carry the torch of freedom into the next one. And unless we give them the priority they deserve, we'll be sacrificing a lot of our future. So again, I urge our state senator, along in partnership with our state assembly members, to make it their top priority not to keep their word they gave to our school children, and that never again a budget should be passed where our school district is left behind. For I will say this as a parent, I do not want to see at the end of the legislative session another newsletter from any of our state legislatures in Albany saying how everything is well and dandy, how they're slapping themselves in the back and keeping taxes low in New York State, cutting spending and funding our schools, when we know that's so far from the truth. So I hope they get this message and give it the priority it deserves. Thank you.
Thank you. And you're right on with those mailers. If we end up with a very good budget year, you're going to get one from like within a week after the school budget, guaranteed.
Didn't you know our school districts are flush with cash?
Yeah. Would anybody else like to address the board at this time? Seeing none, moving on to committee reports. This evening we have the audit committee. Mr. Bison, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Estrada. The audit committee met last Thursday evening, January 26th. In your transmittal, we need to approve the minutes from October 27th, 2016. Before we do that, though, I'd just like to review what transpired at our meeting. We had several claims reports that we reviewed the weeks of October 24th and 31st, November 7th, 14th, 21st, 28th, December 12th and 19th, and then January 2nd, 9th, and 16th. And I have to say that we did have questions for both Mr. Tuttle and for Shelley to respond to with our inquiries. We also reviewed and approved the Treasurer's Report for September, October, November. And under old business, we've made a recommendation for our internal auditor this year. We would like the internal auditor to review food services. I had a conversation with Dr. Eastwood, and we're going to be looking into, they had asked us that one of the areas that we perhaps might consider is the student grading system, and because that has been changed and now indicates that some states have found incidences in other districts for grade changes and favoritism. Not sure that how that applies to the audit committee, but we will investigate and we will get back to you on that. Our next meeting is going to be April 27th. We generally meet at 6 p.m. However, if we can move it to 4:30, we have a community member who has business responsibilities and sometimes cannot make it for the 4:30. And again, I urge any interested community member is more than welcome to attend our meetings. I'm going to back up now and go back and ask for an approval of the minutes for October 27th, 2016. Moved by John. Second by Mr. Estrada. Any discussion on those minutes at all? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bison. We'll do a quick rundown of the other committee reports to see if anybody else has anything. Pastor Williams, anything on buildings and grounds?
I've made an effort not to bother Mr. Scott so much, and he's been very diligent in making sure that we as a board have been getting all the necessary information, but we are planning to have a meeting real soon so that we can bring everybody together. I forget what day. But he's been very diligent in making sure that the board is informed, and as busy as he is, I try not to.
I see the windows have gone up in the
Yeah.
the construction in the high
Don't
school.
they look? It looks absolutely wonderful.
Looking good. One of the things that, just in case for the public's, so they're aware of, one of the things we approved today in the financial memorandum was for the architects to begin assessment, I think, right, from the front area of the high school, the entrance to the library, as well as the concrete area down there. So that'll get worked on as well. Any change orders, Mr. McElroy, coming up? Any meetings?
We have a meeting, I think, tentatively scheduled for next Wednesday. And I'm sure we'll be enthralled with all the various change orders that Mr. Scott has ready for us.
Hopefully none. Yeah, diversity committee, Pastor Williams. Anything? No. Fair funding, I will let you know on fair funding that they're just starting to get the ball rolling, and they wanted a contact for each district and for me to report that back or to send it to Lillian, I think is her name. And I asked if it was still possible for members of the community who used to be board members to be the contact, because they were still very much interested. And I was told, yes, absolutely. So I think I'll have a sidebar with Mr. Warren after the meeting and see if he's still interested in being our district contact for fair funding, since you did such a fabulous job when he was here. IEP reviews, Mr. Perino.
It's going on.
Moving along. Local governments, Town of Wallkill, anything, Mrs. Blumenau? No. And City of Middletown, Mr. Crescenzo, nothing. School Boards Association, I handed everybody what we did last night. I believe Mrs. Clark got an email from Susan Doyle which included an attachment for the presentation that was done by NISBA last night, and she sent it out to all of the board members. I have it here. I'm going to give my copy to John since I've already seen it, but it's a really good read. It does show on there, and I got to the stairs, that Middletown had the highest increase this year from the budget. So I quickly reminded everybody at that meeting that a large portion of our increase is a set-aside for community schools and can't be touched as part of the general fund. So until they release that, we're still kind of hamstrung for that. So lobby days, anybody?
Do you want to back up for NISBA now?
Sure.
I believe that Dr. Eastwood has submitted some.
Yep. Well, I'm going to let Mrs. Blumenau talk about that in a minute, because that's the next committee on here. Is anybody interested, because I'm still on the fence about it. I mean, I would like to go up to Lobby Day. Lobby Day is Sunday night, February 12th, and Monday is when we meet with the representatives, our representatives. I'm not going to be going up on Sunday. I usually go up early morning Monday. If somebody... No, you can still register. You can't really you can still register. but I don't register for the Sunday conference because that's a lot of sit down and talk, and I'm not into that stuff. I'd rather go when we're talking to the, yeah. Did you want to go, or are you busy? All right. If anybody else?
2:13, I'll let you know, Ed.
Yeah, if it's Monday, yeah. It's for 2:13, Monday at 8 o'clock. I got an SUV, so, I can fit a bunch of people if we want to go up. So let me know, no, not this coming Monday, the following. Yeah, the 13th, a week from Monday. So if you guys can let me know by, let's say, Wednesday. All right, cool. And then typically we leave at about 7 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, what hour?
7 p.m. All you got to do is get 7 a.m.
I'll
All you
call you
gotta-
up about 5 early.
All you got to do is sit in the car and fall asleep. It's not much of a challenge.
The alarm clock
And hold on.
the alarm clock still goes off at 5:45, but
We leave at 7 and we arrive at 7:30 in Albany. All right, so we'll talk about that stuff. New York State School Boards. Did you want to mention what Dr. Eastwood had talked about? Is planning on doing, hopefully.
So I got an email. I would love to pull it up, though, if you would. Can you go on to another committee, or am I the last one?
Policy, I can talk to that in a minute.
Yeah, 'cause
Probably
I want to pull it
tomorrow,
up.
I'm going to be sending out an email to policy committee members to throw back some dates within the next week or so, so we can sit down and discuss that. Safety and security, Mr. Perino? Good to go. And Mr. Pierre's not here, so we can't talk about the teacher center. So it's back to you, Mrs. Blumenau.
All right, I'm ready. Perfect. So this, very excited. We had talked about it earlier in the year that after the conference, after the New York State School Boards conference that we go to every year, that it seemed to some of us that we have a lot of knowledge and that we should be sharing it and talking about it. And I know that we do that in a lot of arenas, but this is one that we're actually going to be hopefully taking part in. We submitted, Dr. Eastwood and his team submitted several ideas for workshops during the course of the conference. So I can go through them quickly. The first one is Shattering the Ceiling, College Experiences for Minority and Poverty High Schoolers. And the goal is to share how Middletown shattered the ceiling by increasing the percentage of minority and poverty high schoolers participating in college courses. District percentages rose from 6% to the current 36%, and it's still growing. And that's a free college tuition program. So, secondly, Middletown's blended learning implementation, personalizing education, every student, every day. And that sounded equally interesting. Hear how our blended learning program significantly impacted student achievement and engagement, personalizing learning for all students. A unique opt-in process with strong support increases teacher impact. Content delivery is perspective, targeting individual students' strengths and deficiencies. And then Middletown's 2-year kindergarten program, Success for At-Risk Youth, who exit the program outperforming the general population in primary grades. I mean, these are all success stories that we are experiencing every day, and I know that there are school districts that are struggling who could benefit from what we're doing. But definitely, open educational resources at work in our schools. Middletown's universal pre-kindergarten program, a seamless transition to kindergarten. So, hearing about our universal pre-K program here in our school district, closing the gaps while soaring with rich opportunities. So this is the session focuses on serving English language learners, so our ELL students, through the creation of a rich learning environment, offering techniques and learning opportunities for new to country students with OU BOCES. And so these are some, in addition to submitting those, I guess they can pick and choose what they seem, I hope that they do. It'll be very exciting. to have us be a part of that. But also, we're going to have a booth during their during the trade show, where there are hundreds of vendors and school districts that really share ideas and products. It's really interesting because it's not only products. Like if we wanted to find a new software program, or if we wanted to find an architect, if we wanted to find school buses, they bring in you walk in and there are school buses, on one full side. It's pretty exciting. So I find it exciting. I don't know that everybody finds it exciting. I happen to. I think some of us look at me and go, really? You're that excited about a school bus? But anyway, having a booth there sharing, so that would be exciting, and I would probably help man that booth if I'm selected to go this year. Because I know there are a lot of excited board members who want to go as well.
I would hope that and you might have to adjust the budget, because if it's something that we're seriously contemplating, I would hope that a majority of the board goes, and administrators.
And it's in Lake Placid this year.
Can't get further away.
You can't get further, nor right. And it's a little, from what they've talked about, it's going to be a little bit of a challenge as far as accommodations and things like that. So we really got to get our act together early about who's going and when and how many people, so we can get on that immediately and just start making reservations.
I'm just a little confused. Are we talking about doing a breakout session or a booth? I thought we were
Both.
Both. Okay.
Both.
We're going to have how many sessions? I think it's 6 sessions we've submitted.
Right.
Now, whether we get 6 sessions or not, in other words, they ask us to be there, but I would anticipate that there'll be a couple that will be approved. So probably maybe 3 or 4 of those sessions will be approved, if not all of them. And then we're going to have a booth down in the exhibit area where we can meet and have further conversations with those that came to the breakouts and want more information.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Blumenauer. Dr. Eastwood.
How long do they typically take? Mr. Crescenzo was wondering, how long do they when do we get notified? Do you have any idea? They'll notify us and let us know when? Okay, great. Okay, good.
Cool, thank you. Anything new and compelling for Roundtable? I will let you know that Mr. Coates has texted me that Middletown's beating Newburgh 32-22 at halftime. So they're up there. So,
I just wanted to make mention real quick. I should have done this earlier, but make mention that the Middletown Strings side-by-side concert is going to be going on Saturday at 3 p.m. at Twin Towers Auditorium. And
be there early.
Be there
because
real early.
My anticipation is that it will be sold out.
It's going to be big.
I know,
they're
that's
really
what I mean. But that's what I mean by sold out. It is free, but there'll be no seats at 3 o'clock, guaranteed.
So, but I did want to make mention of that.
That's a good. Thank you for mentioning that. Anything else? Need a motion to adjourn? We'll see everybody on Wednesday. Well, before we do that, our next school board meeting is on a Wednesday because President's Weekend, right? Is that the same? Is that the issue? So Wednesday, February 15th is our next school board meeting right here. Do we need to move up pre-agenda a day, or are we good with still that Tuesday? Next Tuesday. Okay, so that's still good, John, for Tuesday. So I need a motion to adjourn. Moved by Mr. Bison, seconded by Mr. Perino. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 8-0. Everyone have a nice evening, and we'll see you on Wednesday, February 15th.